Hey guys, it's Renee again from God Squad in Glenrowan with this week's Bible reflection. Um, this week we're at the end of Matthew 15, story of Jesus feeding the 4,000. So I'll just read a bit. Jesus left there and went along the Sea of Galilee. Then he went up on the mountainside and sat down. Great crowds came to him, bringing the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, and many others, and laid them at his feet, and he healed them. The people were amazed when they saw the mute speaking, the crippled made well, the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they praised the God of Israel. Jesus called his disciples, and he said, I have compassion for these people. They have already been here with me for 3 days, and have nothing to eat. I do not want to send them away hungry, or they may collapse on the way. His disciples answered, Where could we get enough bread in this remote place to feed such a large crowd? How many loaves do you have? Jesus said. 7, they replied, and a few small fish. At that, Jesus asked the crowd to sit down. He blessed the food. He handed it out to the disciples. They handed it out to the people, and there was a heap left over. An amazing miracle. There's a few questions that I come with after reading this. First is that it's not that long since Jesus did almost the same thing with another crowd. Thousands of people, a handful of loaves and a few small fish, and there was heaps left over. And yet the disciples were completely unready, unprepared for what Jesus was going to do here. I'm not sure whether it's because they weren't keen to lose their 7 fish to the crowd, or whether they were nervous that Jesus wouldn't do the same thing again. But they didn't get it. And the evidence that they didn't get it is a little further on. Let me read a bit more. Later on, Jesus is talking with the Pharisees and frustrated with their not getting the gospel, not getting the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus said to the disciples, be careful of the leaven of the Pharisees. And they were in the boat traveling somewhere, and they said, oh, is Jesus going crook at us because we forgot to bring bread? Jesus replied, why are you talking among yourselves about having no bread? Do you still not understand? Don't you remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000 and how many baskets you gathered? Or the 7 loaves for the 4,000 and how many basketfuls were left over? How is it you don't understand that I'm not talking to you about bread? I guess the thing that's not immediately obvious is that Jesus has done this amazing miracle. People have come to him because they need things fixed, and he's fixed them. The lame walk, the blind see. He feeds thousands of people with almost nothing, and yet, a week later, they all need feeding again. None of the people that Jesus healed lived forever. Jesus didn't come to fix our day-to-day problems, although he's with us in them. And if we need a miracle, if we're game enough to ask, sometimes we get them. But that's not his primary reason for being here. That's not his primary reason for having a relationship with us. The point of all this is that we're meant to finish up in heaven with him and God. The point of all this is that we're supposed to learn something about ourselves. We're supposed to learn something about the kingdom of heaven, about love, about what God's on about. Not, not that our journey is meant to be easy or all of our problems solved or all of our grief even taken away. This life is difficult. The world is full of sin. Jesus has compassion on us and often performs miracles that we need, but his primary purpose is that we spend eternity with him. That's the point that the disciples missed. I think that's why Jesus was getting frustrated with the disciples and the Pharisees. And yet so often the very simple, the very poor, saw what Jesus was on about from the beginning. I pray that we can figure out what Jesus' priority is. The more time we spend in the Gospels, the more time we spend reading God's Word, the more time we spend talking with God, the better chance we've got of learning. Cheers.